I have not seen The Omen, neither the 1976 original nor the 2006 remake, and obviously none of the sequels or aborted TV shows. I probably should. I've heard the original movie is really good, and I'm always up for a movie that gets a legit scare out of me, but I'm probably never going to for one very stupid and selfish reason. I hate the evil kid trope. I'm sorry, I just do. Kids are already abominable little monsters that require complete subjugation, who destroy everything they touch and make you question every day if life is worth living. Grant them the powers of hell, and then suddenly going to hell sounds like the better alternative. Maybe I'm just desensitized to traditional family values and life itself, but I find the idea of an evil little kid more obnoxious than scary. If my kid behaved like how most of these evil or even just bratty children act in these movies, well, I'm not afraid to leave hand imprints if it comes to that. If anything, having a little literal demon killing anyone who even looks at them funny only justifies any excuse to strangle the little shit. I don't care if it lands me in prison for life, I'll spend every day in whatever hole they plant me in with a smile on my face, knowing I just prevented the end of the world. And don't get me started on when that evil little kid is in control of an area with all the adults living their lives in fear and having to kowtow to their every childish whim or risk getting punished. I would literally rather be ruled over by a tyrant who makes me work 20 hours a day in the fields in 120-degree weather as they whip me every 10 minutes, then forces me to sleep on a bed of tacks. At least there, I know what I'm in for. Plus, I can retain my dignity and work every day knowing the end will soon come and I'll be free from pain. As opposed to having to spend the same amount of time reading Hop on Pop to an omnipotent toddler who could turn my head into a duck just for laughs, and who will probably kill me with a passing thought anyway. Just saying, if I was stuck in Peaksville with Anthony, I'd distract the kid with ice cream, then bludgeon the little bastard's head in with the nearest blunt object I could find. So what if I get caught and sent to the cornfield? And so what if Anthony is the only thing keeping the piece of town from falling into the cosmic void? Anything. Anything is better than having your life and very thoughts dictated by a 6-year-old with a god complex. Parents have to deal with that for 20 plus years anyway, and at least they're the ones banishing their kids to their room, or to that aunt they don't like. And sometimes the kids draw their parents a picture that shows their kids acknowledge they exist and love them, which makes the struggle worthwhile. Because, hey, even kids have their good moments now and then. So with that said, you're probably thinking I absolutely despised the Asylum's answer to the Omen remake, simply titled 666, The Child. And yeah, I'd be lying if I said I was excited to get to this one. The Asylum hasn't exactly wowed me with their horror movies, at least the ones they tried to be super serial with, and to have to sit through yet another scare flick, especially one with a plot I normally can't stand. Yeah, I was looking forward to just getting this one over with so I could forget it and move on to our next feature. Was it as bad as I was expecting? Well, let's take a look and see if the fires of hell await the plastic this disc is printed on. A devastating plane crash suddenly rocks a nearby small town. When husband-wife team Scott and Erika Lawson show up to report on the incident, they find that a young boy is the sole survivor of the crash that killed everyone on board. When it's revealed that the boy, Donald, is an orphan, Erika is impressed to adopt him as their own, and, with some help from her television personality sister, successfully convince the priest in charge of the orphanage to grant them custody of Donald. At first, Donald seems like any other kid, though surprisingly cheerful considering the trauma he had just gone through, but soon, suspicious deaths begin to occur in and around the Lawsons' house. While Erika and others brush them off as unfortunate accidents, Scott begins to have his doubts, especially when a rather voluptuous lady shows up claiming to be Donald's new nanny. As Scott begins to dig into the circumstances around the plane crash, he soon discovers that the crash wasn't the only accident Donald was involved in, and that Donald himself may be the cause. For it turns out that Donald is the son of Satan himself, the Antichrist prophesied to wage war against heaven and bring about the end of the world. Now, while Scott doesn't want to believe it, the events surrounding Donald become stranger and more deadly, and Scott must decide if his son must die to prevent the apocalypse. Will Scott work up the courage to kill Donald and foil the devil's world-ending plan? Did the movie forget to hide some of its product placement? Like I said, I haven't seen The Omen, but I do recognize that this movie borrows a couple beats from the 1976 original. We have the orphan boy a couple adopts, though unlike the other movie, it's not a secret here. We have an ominous new nanny showing up after the kid's original nanny dies mysteriously. We have the boy's new father investigating Donald's past and finding much of it has literally burned up. We have the crazy cleric who warns the father that Donald is the son of Satan. We have the disfigured priest who confirms Donald's the Antichrist. We even get the revelation that Donald's demonic status is confirmed by a hidden birthmark that spells out 666, among a couple other points I'm not giving away for spoiler reasons. Again, kinda surprised they got away with what they did. There's carefully tiptoeing around blatant allusions to a movie while still making it clear they're just cashing in on the zeitgeist. And then there's straight up plagiarism. You could say a lot about the asylum, and we do, but one thing that can't be said is that they don't have a crazy amount of gall, or a galling amount of craziness. But fine, I think we've accepted by this point some plagiarism is the norm with these scripts the writers had 3 days to bang out. What really matters is the execution. How much care the studio put into taking their copy-paste job and churning out their own take on familiar material. And in the case of this movie, one with the story shamelessly taken from another movie with another subject that I already can't stand, I had a good time. No, seriously, I actually had a good time watching this movie. I've completely surprised myself as well. It's well written, well acted, well shot, well paced. By guy, this is legitimately one of the Asylum's best movies. Not that its competition was fierce, especially considering the other excuses for horror it's competing against, but for a movie I was already ready to brush away before I removed the package from the sealed disc, I was curiously invested in what was going on. Is there actually some merit to this movie, or am I also possessed by the devil and giving this movie praise is what will lead to triggering Judgment Day? Well, I'll try to explain, and you can judge for yourself. Keep the holy water in standby. Obviously, the weakest part of the movie is the plot. Even disregarding the elements that are bulk lifted from the much more famous movie, the structure is basic at best. Most of the movie goes as follows. The characters talk, someone upsets Donald, that character is killed off. The characters talk, someone upsets Donald, that character is killed off. And there's your runtime. Later in the movie, we'll see scenes of Scott investigating the strange backstory of Donald, but it goes exactly where you think it's going. And honestly, that's pretty much it. There are no huge arcs, no major character development, no surprises. It's just people going about their day, sometimes stumbling across something related to Donald, and usually getting killed by him. There's your movie. I think the biggest event is when Scott and Erika separate for a short while. Erika was the one being built up as the character of focus. It was her idea to adopt Donald, it's her sister that arranged the adoption, and she has the goal of wanting to leave her local news anchor position in favor of a national network. And halfway through the runtime, she's offered an interview for said position, has a short argument with Scott over it, and then leaves until the very end of the movie, leaving Scott as our lead. I don't know if this was intentional or if the actress had to cut her role short for some reason, but it's the only non-Donald focused development I think happens in the entire movie. And she's replaced with another character who's only introduced after she leaves. I don't know, I'm kinda curious what happened there. But besides that little detour, the movie has practically no plot or game-changing developments, other than the plot points they stole directly from the Omen. Though luckily for us, and strangely for a studio known for its exploitation, they leave out the part where Donald's conception was from Satan f***ed a dog. Insert your own woodland critter Christmas joke here. So without a plot, the movie needs some really engaging characters the audience can be invested in to carry us to the end of the film. And you know what? These are some of the most fun characters I've ever seen from the Asylum. Now without a plot or arc, so not exactly the most developed three-dimensional figures seen in a movie, but it's in how they're written and how they're performed that makes them such a delight to watch. First we have Scott. He's the cameraman of the couple, and the one who initially opposes adopting Donald. Not because he doesn't want kids, but because they're very hardworking people who may not have time to raise a child. There's logic there, especially since most of the time we do see Scott and Erika out of the house, trying to work or get errands done. But he acquiesces quickly, and we see him and Donald hit it off, with Scott trying to help Donald feel comfortable with his new surroundings and just trying to be a good dad. Though as we see, he's kind of one of those fun dads, someone who has no problem with including Donald in activities, including movies and shows he probably shouldn't be watching at his age. Though he does make sure he's not showing anything super explicit. I really like how this character is executed. It feels natural, like this is how someone in real life would go through these motions. He wants to be a good parent, he wants to be a good husband, he's just a little immature and occupied with his job, but he still tries to make everything work. Not always succeeding, but that's just how his personality functions. And when the mysterious deaths start happening, he doesn't immediately pin them on Donald. Though things Donald mentions in passing start to make him suspicious, and he starts to investigate Donald's past and where the kid came from. And even when evidence piles up that his son does have something to do with everything, he doesn't want to believe it. And I don't blame him! If crazy church people told me my kid was the Antichrist, I'd tell them to stick their communion wafers up where God's glory doesn't shine. But he's not presented as an idiot. It's not like it's conclusive evidence where he's staring straight at the sun and denying that it's shining. They're accusations no sane person would normally accept, and he has to mull them over in his head and decide if something so stupid is actually the logical explanation. Right up until the very end, when he's finally given proof that Donald is the Antichrist and he has to send him back to the hell he spawned from. It's rare to see a logical, likable male lead in a horror movie, and a loving parent at that, which is usually reserved for the one playing the mother. Usually, the father figure in horror movies is either inconsequential or the most violent and closed-minded of the characters. So to see Scott given the main focus and acting so rationally is refreshing. So while he's not given that much depth or acted as well as he could have been, this is a perfectly serviceable performance of a character not commonly seen in this type of horror movie. And hey, it's not a character taken straight from the actual Omen movie. Mostly, but we'll get back to that. Co-starring with Scott, at least for the first half, is his wife Erika, the anchor person of the duo. And being the one who actually presents the news, she's the one who's paid the big money and has the most strain put on her to deliver an exceptional performance. So in this case, it's the mother who's the breadwinner of the family. Again, kind of progressive for a horror movie from 2006. She doesn't have as much to her character as Scott, but what we get is perfectly understandable. Her job is to present breaking news, all while looking good and showing just enough emotion to deliver the point, but not so much that she appears biased or inconsiderate. Which, from what I've heard from actual newscasters, is a lot harder than it sounds. So it's a job that means a lot of stress, especially since one wrong thing said could mean the end of her reputation, and the stress carries over to her personal life. When she and Scott are together, we see the strain their professional life also has on their marriage, that they also have to work together, and that one is clearly higher on the food chain than the other. We find that Erika is very image-focused, and she doesn't take kindly to Scott mentioning she seems to be overacting on camera, which is a valid concern for an anchor person. And we see that Erika is determined to get out of her small-time news gig and move on to something higher profile and paying, like a national news network. Notably because it'll get her out of the shadow of her sister, a much more well-known and respected local TV personality. They're things she and her husband constantly argue about, and it's clear she doesn't feel like she's getting the respect she deserves, especially with Scott acting immature for his age. But she's not portrayed as a cold-hearted, one-dimensional minor antagonist who only thinks about money and her career. It was her idea to adopt Donald in the first place, not for publicity, but because she wants a child of her own, and she wants to feel like she can have a positive effect on at least one of the tragedies she has to report on. And it's clear she and Scott love each other. When Scott's dad dies, she's willing to miss out on breaking news so she can support him, and only leaves because he insists. And while she's not there for him as much as Scott, she obviously also loves Donald. She just shows more of a professional mentality, willing to buy him things as opposed to spend time with him. It's a really convincing portrayal of a modern professional couple, especially where one is more career-minded than the other. They love each other, but they also have to work in the same environment and live in the same house, and that can result in a lot of arguments where they don't immediately kiss and make up afterwards. Heck, Erika has no problem with springing the news about a business trip on Scott at the very last minute, and then she's gone for almost the rest of the movie. So while I would have liked to see this actress in more of the movie, and I again wonder if her departure was intentional, I can say that she's a perfect partner and foil for Scott, and she expresses more in 30 minutes than she did in the entire runtime of Frankenstein Reborn. Even the kid is likable, and gives a great performance. You know how most evil children are portrayed. Dark, moody, don't like to smile or be around others, they get their kicks from staring at a corner or mutilating a small animal, and even when they're fulfilling their only purpose and mysteriously killing or trying to kill others, they're still completely blank slates. Unless they're screaming at the top of their lungs and throwing a king-sized fit that destroys any lingering doubts about throwing them off a cliff. It's an annoying, overused cliche that's another reason I can't stand this trope. But here, Donald is a kid. At first, it looks like they're setting him up to just be another dark, brooding sadist, staring out the window like he just wants to watch the world burn. But when he's adopted, the very first words out of his mouth are, "Don't cry, Mom," and he happily hugs his adoptive parents. I'm not gonna lie, my heart slightly melted during this scene, and it's this point where I realized I wasn't just in for another evil kid movie. And from there, Donald proves to be an interesting kid. He's lively, he's curious, he likes sugary cereal, he's perfectly willing to play outside with his grandpa, he wants to hang out with his dad and uncle. He's a little shy and moody, but considering the experiences he went through, that's reasonable. And he's a gifted artist, drawing sketches his parents are really impressed by. He's reluctant to talk about his past and the disasters he lived through, but when he does, it's not delivered in an ominous monotone like you'd expect, but quickly and cautiously, like he's tattling and he's afraid of getting smacked by his real dad. And it's all acted perfectly. There's a natural charm and likability to this kid's performance, like he wants to be there, and he's having the time of his life. Like with Molly from When a Killer Calls, I wouldn't be surprised if he was just told to act like himself around the other actors, only sticking to the script when he had to. He's happy, he's sad, he's shy, he's reluctant, he's social, he likes to do what he likes to do, and feel love for it, even if he's not supposed to do what he's doing. He's, well, a kid, and one of the best child actors I've ever seen. Man, I want to adopt this kid as my own. Even when the deaths start happening, there's still a bit of a mystery behind him. Oh, they're clearly done by Donald. But does Donald even know that? Is he aware of what he's doing? Does he mean to hurt these people? Or is it just reflexive, like squashing a mosquito on your arm? If he knows what he's doing, is it out of malice or because he's acting like a kid with a kid's view of defending himself? And when he is encouraged to use his dark powers, is it because he wants to or he thinks he has to? There's a lot of ambiguity to draw your own conclusions from. Heck, even when he's addressing the horrible deaths, he's still kinda cute. He talks like he's aware that the deaths happened and that it was a bad thing, but he's kind of blasé to it at this point. Like he's seen some stuff growing up in the nth circle of hell and Daddy Satan told him over and over again, and it was just natural. So he's a little hesitant about all the death, but for him, it's just Tuesday. There's even one funny scene where we see Donald just sitting down laughing at cartoons. And when Scott asks him if he knows where Grandpa went, Donald just goes, I don't know, in the tone of a kid who knows he's done something bad, but he's trying to play innocent. I get some major young Michael Myers from Rob Zombie's Halloween vibes with this scene, which is surprising considering this came out over a year before that movie. Who says the asylum can't be innovative? So while there's not much to Donald, outside of generic charming kid who turns out to have a hidden dark side, the writer and the actor construct an incredible performance out of what they're given to work with, resulting in a kid character who may be the Prince of Darkness and the precursor of the apocalypse, but I'd still play Xbox with. Though couldn't they have found a place to work these in?
My arrival connotes the end of the beginning of the end, the new reign of my father, the Prince of Darkness. Here begins the rule of pain. Now feel the wrath of the fallen angel. The plague of night is upon thee.
Well, while it's fun to see these main actors take these shriveled character husks and wear them like Gucci, the true joy comes from the side characters. Now these should just be throwaway roles, excuses for these actors to just mutter their lines and walk out there with a paycheck. But guy, nearly every single minor character acts like they're straight out of a cartoon. It doesn't matter if they're here for 10 minutes or just one, everyone puts their all into every single second they're on screen. They are deliciously over the top, and perfectly cast in whatever side role they've been assigned. Father Francis, the guy who heads the orphanage Scott and Erika tried to adopt Donald from, is that priest you see in every other Hell on Earth movie like this. But the guy plays him so seriously, so stiffly, and with such an air of smugness, it's hilarious to watch. Like the actor heard about this archetype, but never saw another instance of it, so he has to put in the performance of his life to serve as the go-to example for all future depictions. And yeah, it kinda does. Every time I see a priest in an asylum movie, I'm probably gonna think of this guy.
It says here, Mr. Lawson.
Oh, please, call me Scott.
Mr. Lawson, it says here that you have spent a considerable amount of time overseas. Hardly the best arrangement for a father and son relationship. Conscientiousness I can appreciate, Mr. Lawson. It's a dead parent I have trouble abiding. Typically, those who work in the world of entertainment make very poor candidates. Be that as it may, I have great respect for Mary Lou Conroy. She is the only performer, besides Celine Dion, to carry moral responsibility. Now, having said all that, I am prepared to release little Donald into your custody. Congratulations.
Then there's Scott's brother Tony, who's the fun uncle to Donald and the only one more immature than Scott. This is again a character we've seen in every horror movie, the childish slacker obsessed with naked women and partying. He's usually the annoying guy you want to see dead, and often the second or third to go. But I'm sorry, he's just so much fun. And I love the chemistry he and Donald share, and what he and Scott share. I like that he's trying to convince Scott to get out from under his wife's shadow and grow a pair, that even if they're not equal at work, he still has equal say in their decisions at home. He's also the one who finds some of Donald's hidden drawings that, I guess, confirm he's the Antichrist? I don't know. We don't get a good look at these pictures, so I can't tell if they're prophetic or just a kid acting out through his art, but they freak out the calmest guy in the movie, and he desperately tries to call Scott about it, so I guess they mean something. He doesn't last for long afterwards, but every second he gets in this movie, he's really fun to watch. I wish I had an uncle like this growing up. Heck, one day, I hope to be an uncle like this. Minus all the stuff that could get me arrested. And Scott's father and Donald's adoptive grandfather, Big Jake? Well, I didn't know I wanted the human form of Foghorn Leghorn, but that's what we get.
That's a fine kid you guys got yourself there. You really lucked out. You could have been saddled with some crack pipe sucking monster. Well, beats a rest home. You put that ceiling fan in?
You betcha.
Yeah, I thought so. All right, you go shoot yourself some monkeys, son. All right, sir. The boy's safe with a Marine.
That boy's as strong as an ox, and just about as smart.
Even Satan's servant Lucy gets in a good performance. She's been sent by the Dark One disguised as Donald's new nanny to awaken his powers and lead him to his ultimate purpose. And throughout the movie, she secretly undermines Scott's role as caregiver and protector to cement herself in Donald's life, while giving the air of just being a young but experienced nanny with a dark past. I love that she gives her backstory as just a regular backstory. She doesn't say something like she's from a really hot place and winks at the camera. She says she was in the punk scene and the Peace Corps and leaves any mention of her satanic ties out of it. And I love how that helps her explain away every strange thing she does. Like when Scott sees her naked, she just states that in the places she grew up in, nudity meant nothing. They're logical excuses to her actions as she slowly seduces Scott, which doesn't go anywhere, but it's very subtle and devil-like of her. The chemistry between her and Donald isn't as developed as with everyone else. She just kind of shows up and suddenly Donald feels like he needs her. But it is interesting how she starts to awaken the more dark and violent aspects of Donald's powers and encourages him to wipe away all opposition, including those who he didn't originally consider a threat. And, every so often, even she gets a funny line.
Then I will retire for the evening. There's a mini-series on about the life of Christ.
Oh, I didn't know you were religious.
Oh, hardly. It's just good for a laugh.
And that leads to another reason why these characters are so much fun. The dialogue is incredible. Not by being that memorable or quotable, but in how casually and naturally every line is written and delivered. Every time these characters speak, I don't hear actors reading lines. I hear people talking about their everyday lives. It's exactly like dropping in on two people just having a conversation. What they're gonna do that day, what they think of someone else, how they're getting along, and what they think about what just happened. With some small factoids and opinions that don't really tie into anything else, but add to the illusion of how fragmented real conversations are in real life. This is some of the best flow and character dialogue I've heard in a movie. Usually when a movie tries to make its dialogue laid back and casual, there's always some point where their tone changes and I say, here we go, this is the exposition dump. But I rarely got that in this movie. Everything important is delivered with the characters just having a chat, which could be a problem if we didn't care about what they're saying, but because these are interesting characters with unique deliveries, I followed every word. I got more out of these casual, seemingly unimportant discussions than any movie that dumps paragraph after paragraph of high-handed exposition on its audience. And yet, most of it is more important than they let on. We'll hear them talk about how they need to put in a ceiling fan and why they need to get on it ASAP, and later we'll see a ceiling fan, which plays a minor role in the movie. But it's sandwiched in with just a regular conversation, so you don't realize it's important until it happens. There are a couple instances like this, where something happens, you wonder how it happened, then you remember a character casually mentioned it earlier. Normally, these would just be throwaway lines, something added because the writer forgot to set something up. But because they match the speaking style of the movie, they work just as well as anything. And you kind of feel smart for picking out the important lines. Heck, a lot of the exposition isn't even spoken, but delivered through these silent montages of Scott researching information on Donald's history and the Antichrist, allowing the movie to convey information while still taking a break from the action. Kind of like Evil Eyes, except we're actually learning something and it's leading somewhere. Oh, and you know how movies will drop pop culture references to try to be topical and hip with its target audience, and 90% of the time they fall flatter than dropping a crepe on the floor? Well, with this movie, I actually buy that these characters know what they're talking about. I believe that the actors playing these people know what these things are, and that the writer is familiar with what he's throwing into the script. Or at the very least, it's written and performed so well, it gives the illusion they know what they're talking about. So when Tony mentions his nephew has Caligula on the PSP, I believe he has Caligula on the PSP, especially since Scott asks if it's the rated or unrated cut. And when Father Francis asks Scott and Erika if they've seen Mommy Dearest, yeah, I can believe they have. A lot more than half the name drops from Jane White. Like the previous movie, we get very few Asylum regulars for this movie's cast, and most of them we haven't seen in quite a while. Sarah Leaving as Erika, we've seen in a good number of Asylum movies, and we'll see her again in some more. Reza Riazi from The Da Vinci Treasure is here for maybe 2 seconds. And legendary voice actor DC Douglas makes his first Asylum appearance in Scarecrow Slayer almost 3 years prior, playing, what else, a sadistic doctor. But most notably, the movie features the long-awaited return of Kim Little, playing Erika's sister Mary Lou, where she hosts a highly watched and respected Martha Stewart-esque show for the local town. She only has a minute of screen time, but I don't care. She's such a versatile and talented actress that a minute is all it takes to make sitting through even the bleakest of Asylum movies worth it. And when Scott and Erika argue about her, I truly don't know if they're referring to the character or the actress herself.
She's our savior.
She's the devil.
She has power and influence.
Baking is not.
All right.
In terms of newcomers, we have Adam Vincent playing our lead Scott, who's appeared in a total of 4 movies, with this being his second to last. Sad, because I think he does a great job as an actor, but I wish him well in whatever he does now. Nora J. Novak playing Lucy, who's produced, written, directed, and acted in stuff. Lucy Dottie, who plays Crazed Nun, and who apparently owns the studio that's been used for hospital scenes from everything from Asylum movies to medical dramas to even Men in Black 3 and The Dark Knight Rises. Robert Pike Daniels playing Father Francis, whose prolific acting and voice work has earned him roles in a lot of famous projects, including LucasArts games, BioShock 2, World of Warcraft, and the Coen Brothers movie Hail Caesar, as well as future Asylum movies, so we'll be seeing him again soon. But the actor with surprisingly the most amount of clout is the one playing Donald. That's Boo Boo Stewart, who, just 4 years later, would score the role of Seth in the Twilight movie saga. And Disney Channel fans may recognize him for his lead role in the Descendants franchise as Jay, the son of Jafar. It's kinda sad those movies are a step up from this one, but they're world-famous multi-billion-dollar franchises, so what am I being condescending about? And he unquestionably demonstrates the talent that would make him famous here, so hey, well done. He's certainly a sunflower that sprouted out of a dirty tuna can and now stands tall in the field of accomplishment. And he's still going strong to this day, so let's hope his role on Paradise City leads to more good things for him. Directing duties this time are handled by Jack Perez, known for writing and directing the cult film America's Deadliest Home Video, arguably the precursor to the found footage and shot-on-video genre as we know it today. He also helped direct the arguable cult hit Some Guy Who Kills People, featuring Ahmed Best and Barry Bostwick, and he wrote and directed Fear Force 5, something I have actually seen, and I recommend for the strange few who wonder if Jolly Roger Massacre at Cutter's Cove was produced by Saban. And 3 years after this movie, he'd returned to the Asylum to write and direct one of their more well-known titles, and a movie that's also gained a cult following, Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus. But most importantly, head and shoulders above everything else he's been involved with, he directed an episode of Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. Because, hey, who doesn't want to work with Kevin Sorbo? Pre-Christian movie and Twitter troll phase. Oh, and the movie was written by Ben Henry, who wrote this movie, its sequel, and literally nothing else. That's all I have to say about Ben Henry. Music's fine, nothing memorable, but it pipes up with tension-driven strings when things get a little dramatic. The sound's also fine. Most of the sound is kept on the same level with nothing blowing out the speakers, and I can hear every word perfectly. However, we do get a return to obvious ADR, where actors clearly recorded some lines on location and some in a recording booth. So actors could be talking outside, yet there's no ambiance to hide that they're not being recorded outside. Sometimes we'll even get one line that sounds perfectly clear and crisp, while the next you can hear the reverb from the room. It's not as bad as The Surge, but it's painfully obvious. And after the last several movies that didn't have this problem, a little painful to listen to.
I don't like fighting.
Neither does your mom.
Kids at the home used to beat me up.
Also give them credit that they refrained from using most of the most overused stock sound effects that can instantly kill all sense of professionalism. All except for one literally painful shot. Oh god, did you really need to ruin that shot with the noise? What were the other cartoon impact sounds that didn't make the cut? No! But another area the movie shines in is its cinematography. Yeah, we've been getting a good run of movies with higher than average camera work, and this one isn't the best, but it is up there. I love how this movie is shot and put together. The movie has a heavy reliance on tracking shots and slow zooms, but they're all done professionally, keeping track of the actors and following them as they move around the set. And when the camera's kept still, we get a wide variety of different angles and viewpoints, most following the rule of thirds, with our focus directed towards the sides of the frame, so we don't get tired of seeing the same thing for too long. Most of the shots are kept wide, letting us see the characters and their surroundings. The only times we get close-up shots are when things get dramatic, and we want to see the worry on the characters' faces. So they're used for the intensive scenes they're meant for. We even get a few shots where the focus switches to something in the foreground, which is surprisingly rare with Asylum movies, but can set a mood without changing the angle. Even the Dutch angles, which I'm normally not a big fan of, aren't distracting, and are used to establish uncertainty in a creepy location. Again, like they're meant to do. And as for transitions, what transitions? The movie is almost completely devoid of visual effects, and, besides the occasional crossfade, utilizes practically no editing tricks. No speed-ups, no fast cuts, no motion blur, no white flashes, just scenes as they were originally filmed, moving at the speed the camera was originally pointed in. And after sitting through the Da Vinci Treasure, my recovering retinas thank it greatly. I guess my only problem with the camera work and editing is an overall lack of style. Sure, it looks great, but it also looks basic, like a skilled cinematographer is just going through the motions. Compare it to the stalker-like movements of When a Killer Calls, or the experimentally ambitious shots in Dracula's Curse, or the fast-paced editing of the Da Vinci Treasure, where the styles add to the overall tone. Even Frankenstein Reborn, as badly put together as that movie was, still had that cheap horror student film feel to it. This looks like good camera work for the sake of good camera work, where shots look great, but don't convey much feeling or add to the movie's tone outside of the weird angles we've seen and everything. Of course, with the lack of style the movie seems to have, maybe there just wasn't anything to accentuate. I also tried to think of something that could make the movie more visually appealing, and came up with nothing, so, like with everything else, I guess it's just doing the best with what everyone's given. And hey, it looks better than 80% of everything else we've seen or will see, and I will always be happy to see directors and camera operators on their A-game, even if it is for a shameless copy of another horror movie made in a week. By this point, you're probably saying, wait, isn't this an Asylum horror movie? Are we ever gonna get to the gore shots? Does this movie even have gore shots? Yes, there are a couple scenes of people being violently killed, and most aren't worth the wait. There are very few on-screen deaths, and most of what they do show are clearly just blood tubes splurting on the other side of the actors' heads, vampires versus zombies style. Some of them, it looks like they're setting up for something brutal, and then drop the ball. Look at this scene. The fan spinning faster and faster, the guy standing right under it, making no attempt to get away, the fan drops, and it nicks his artery. Oh, come on! You had a setup for a decapitation, and you tossed it! Even vampires vs. zombies let their heads roll. They do try to make the scenes more brutal by adding a blood splatter effect, which, yeah, I do like a good splatter effect, so it almost works. But if you were expecting any of the creative death scenes from the other Omen movies, you'll be more disappointed than a 9/11 hijacker searching through hell for his 72 virgins. Okay, to the movie's credit, there are two brutal death scenes, one involving a steam pipe and the other a garage full of mechanical tools, and they're both brutal as hell. To the point I'm pixelating them, just to be on the safe side. So there is a twinge of creativity to the movie's kill shots, and some convincing makeup for the on-screen deaths, but if you came here for the gore, this movie ranks just above Legion of the Dead in how exciting their shots are. Of course, maybe 2 exciting kill shots is all we need, because that's all the movie has time to show. Minus end credits, this movie, no joke, runs a mere 70 minutes. An hour 10, possibly the shortest runtime of the Asylum's catalog. That's shorter than The Nightmare Before Christmas, and almost as long as Dumbo. I've had showers longer than this movie. I guess it's better than being too long, another problem we've had to deal with Asylum movies, but come on! They could have easily tacked on at least another 10 minutes. Show more of Scott and Donald, maybe of them walking around town with Donald not wanting to go somewhere because it's close to a church. Or even more of Lucy and Donald, like she's asking him how his dad is, his real dad, and how excited he is to rule the world. Show him practicing his powers, Lucy egging him into abandoning any mortal connections he has to those he supposedly loves, and that the only thing that matters is him. Heck, if you really want to go this direction, have her try to seduce him. Present herself as completely at his service, give him more motivation to destroy everything, and explain why there seems to be an inseparable bond between Donald and Lucy by the end. Go ahead and make it uncomfortable. Don't show anything that could get me arrested, but let the exploitation studio exploit. As presented, I feel like I could sneeze and completely miss a scene. If you've ever wanted a movie to time exactly how long to cook your family-sized frozen lasagna, the Asylum's got you covered. There's really no point going over the movie's climax. It's the Omen ending, so if you've seen or at least read a plot summary of the original or the remake, you know exactly what's going to happen, if you haven't already figured it out yourself. But I will point out one certain element that made me die laughing. Exactly like the Omen movie, it's said that the Antichrist will have the numeral 666 as a birthmark somewhere on their body. And where does Donald have this number of the beast and oh so important icon of his unholiness? On his tongue. Yeah, the kid just has it pierced on his tongue like he's Dennis Rodman. When I saw this, I was floored. I had to pause the movie, I was laughing so hard. Really? Of all the places to put the name of the beast that chose his tongue? A little on the nose there. I don't know if they were trying to make a Mouth of Madness reference, but it means that every time Donald has to convince his followers he's the spawn of Satan, he has to blow a raspberry. And you know, I'm glad. I'm glad they went with this direction with this plot point. Because it proves that they were having fun. That's a complaint I had with the last movie, that they were taking it too seriously. But here, no, there is no way I can watch this scene with a straight face. Well done, movie. You have made the mark of the devil as dignified as Jar Jar sticking out his tongue. You have earned the B-movie seal of not giving a shit. So this is gonna sound really strange, but I kind of recommend this movie. Oh, it's not good. In fact, in most of the ways that matter, it's atrocious. There's no plot, except for sections taken straight out of the more well-known flick. There's very little tension or mystery. The death scenes are either too brutal or embarrassingly amateur, and when you think it's finally going to get somewhere, it ends. It's a watered-down version of a movie that was already a watered-down version of a more famous and acclaimed horror film. But with that said, I still had a good time watching it. The characters are interesting, the actors are really talented, it's beautifully shot, I was surprisingly invested in the overly casual dialogue, and when we did get a death scene that worked, hey, it worked. And yeah, the movie only runs 70 minutes, but at least that means it doesn't overstay its welcome. The movie has the attitude that it knows it's short and it knows it's just ripping off another movie, but still wants to be noticed and entertaining. It's like a really funny joke your friend tells you on your doorstop right before he leaves your house. Sure, it didn't last long, but you're gonna remember it. And that's this movie. Something that knows it's a joke, but still tries to make an impact. I don't know, maybe I'm just so desperate for good qualities in Asylum movies that I'm overhyping something I wouldn't think twice about in a theatrical release. But I take it where I can get it. And I guess I'm not alone, since this movie ended up getting only the second Asylum sequel the following year. So maybe somebody somewhere also agrees with me. If you're looking for a legit scary movie with some deep lore, foreboding atmosphere, and gore flying every 10 minutes, you're gonna be disappointed. But if you feel like just watching something fun with engaging characters and the occasional inventive kill shot, hey, you could do a lot worse. You could also do a lot better, but for the Asylum, this truly is one of their best. Pop it in, decide for yourself, and have yourself a hell of a time. Well, it looks like that's the last supernatural horror movie we'll be seeing for a while, so we can finally take a breather and let the Asylum show us how they cash in on other genres. And for anyone who's already missing the magic of Lance Henriksen, don't worry, the studio has it covered next. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting me on Patreon and help me create even more content like this. It's only $1 to get early access to my videos, and only $5 gets you a credit at the end of each of those videos, with higher tiers offering these and even more perks. And as you help me reach certain goals, I have super special content lined up for all of you. Head on over and check out my Patreon today, and I'll see you next time.